Chairperson Barnett, would you like to open the meeting now, or do you?
Sure. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's 5:30 on June 11th. And so this is a special meeting, and the first thing I'm going to do is change up the agenda just a little bit. Tony, could you please give the overview from city staff regarding the special rules that apply to this teleconference meeting?
Certainly.
Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Tony Wheeler, and I, along with Scott Wagner, will be facilitating the Zoom portion of this meeting. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and our public access cable channel 25. I'm going to go over just a little bit of logistics about how to operate your Zoom during this meeting. We ask that during the meeting, please mute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon found on the lower left side of the Zoom menu next to the video icon. When you are muted, a red line will appear over the icon. Doing this during the meeting will make it easier for everyone to hear. You'll just have to remember to unmute yourself if and when you want to speak. In some cases, Scott may mute or unmute people as needed. Each time you speak, please remember to state your name and title for the benefit of those who might be listening remotely. In the menu, you can also turn your camera on or off by clicking that video icon on the lower left of your screen. For the purposes of this meeting, we ask that you please keep the video on during the meeting. If you're participating by phone, I don't see anybody participating at this point by phone, but if someone does, you can click *6 to unmute your microphone or your phone. For those using Zoom, somewhere on your screen you will see a choice to toggle between speaker and gallery view. Speaker view shows the active speaker, and gallery view tiles all of the meeting participants. We are, as Chairperson Barnett indicated, operating under special guidelines established by the Attorney General for these Zoom-type public meetings. So there are some special rules that I want to call your attention to tonight and ask that you keep these in mind. We do have to follow these procedures to ensure that all provisions of the Kansas Open Meetings Act are met. Commissioners, you must state your name and title each time you speak. All motions need to be stated clearly. After a motion is made and seconded, the mayor will call on commissioners individually to provide their vote. Chairperson Barnett will then need to announce whether the motion carried and the count of the vote. Various staff members are present via Zoom, and we must also state our name and title each time we speak. If we have persons in City Hall who wish to make public comment, the chairperson will call for in-person public comment at the appropriate time, and staff will direct the speaker to the podium or an area just off the podium to speak. And we will ask that anyone providing comment tonight in person in the commission room to please follow social distancing and safety protocols. The chair can impose a time limitation on public comment so long as it is uniformly applied to all speakers. Again, we want to remind you to please mute yourself when you are not speaking. Thank you, and with that, I will turn it back to Chairperson Barnett.
Oh.
Katie, I believe you're still muted. If you could unmute yourself, please.
Got it. Okay. So I was drafting my remarks for this evening. I didn't think that I would need to announce why we're here. But I've realized through the last couple weeks that some people just don't understand or acknowledge the significance of what's happening. So I do want to say why we've had this special meeting here on June 11th. I've called the special meeting tonight because of the death of Ahmaud Arbery on February 23rd, 2020, Breonna Taylor on March 13th, 2020, and George Floyd on May 25th, 2020, who all forced us to remember so many other Black men and women who have been unjustly killed. This kind of catapulted us to today, where our commission has an opportunity to acknowledge maybe we haven't been doing enough to achieve our mission, and step forward to make change in our community. So tonight, as a reminder, our purpose with the Human Relations Commission is to endeavor to eliminate prejudice among the various racial, ethnic, and other groups in the city, and to further goodwill among all people of Lawrence. So that is our purpose. It's pretty broad. And so if you're like me and you've been ruminating on what we can do as commissioners, your instinct may be to go directly to the hot button policing problem. But I just want to remind everyone, we do have a community police review board. We have a criminal justice coordinating council that's formed a work group on diversity and equity. And so our job and our directive from the city, which formed this commission 40 years ago, is so much broader. Racism and all the discrimination we're charged with eliminating is pervasive in so many different aspects of life. It's not just policing, it's the criminal justice system generally, healthcare, education, corporate hiring, homelessness, and so many other areas of life. So I want to dig deep into our bylaws, our purpose, and refocus, and let's start investing in the cultural competency of our community. So we'll go over this again later, but I just want to kind of set the stage. Our mayor has charged us with, one, convening to create a plan to review the city's ordinances using the GARE toolkit, which we'll hear about GARE a little bit later in the agenda. And two, making recommendations to the commission regarding ordinances that disproportionately impact our Black residents and other persons with marginalized identities in our community. I don't know about you, but I didn't volunteer on this commission to serve 4 hours out of the year and think that that's enough to eliminate discrimination. So it's going to take a lot of time and effort from all of us, and I hope everyone's up to the task, but I don't want to spend any more time on my thoughts. I just want to open it up for any other commissioners who want to say anything right now. If you want to unmute yourself and get started before we launch into the agenda.
Caleb Stevens, Human Relations Commissioner. I wanted to thank you, Katie, for that. I also wanted to add that on May 27, 2020 at 11 a.m., 38-year-old Black trans man, Tony McDade, was also killed by the police. So it's super important that as we are also in Pride Month, that we remember that all Black lives matter. There's just been so many, unfortunately, that it's hard to keep track of. But unfortunately, this is also what happens to queer and trans, non-binary folks in general. So just want to make sure and point that out. I also want to say Black Lives Matter, and they've always mattered, but I know that I would want somebody to say that to me, so I'm saying that to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevens. Anyone else want to say anything before we get started?
a prior Human Relations Commissioner, I also want to affirm Black Lives Matter, and I want to thank you, Katie, for bringing this up. And I want to thank the mayor for having some foresight into a committee that I feel like has completely been underused. So I appreciate that.
Okay, this is Katie Barnett speaking. Let's go ahead and review Commissioner Ananda's statement, which was read at the June 2nd, 2020 City Commission meeting. Staff, Tony or Scott, did you have anything specific that you wanted to say? I kind of outlined in my introductory statements what we are charged with doing as a result of the mayor, but was there anything else that you wanted to say with regard to this statement?
Yes, Tony Wheeler, City Attorney. Thank you. There are additional comments that I wish to make. Mayor Ananda and I spoke this afternoon, and she very much appreciates the Human Relations Commission convening at this time and beginning this important work in these discussions. She, along with the rest of the commission, are very interested in observing your work. Mayor Ananda wanted me to let you know that she could be available tonight. She is accessible if we need to reach out to her. She certainly will be reviewing tonight's meeting as she prepares for next Tuesday's meeting. The charge that is part of your packet tonight was based on the comments that the mayor made at our June 2nd City Commission meeting. Next week, the full City Commission will be discussing those comments and ideas that other commissioners may have. So I just wanted to alert the Human Relations Commission that while we have this statement from the mayor at this point, we may have additional direction or guidance from the commission on what they'd like to see this board do in the future. So I just wanted all of you to be aware of that. But they asked me to convey to you their deep appreciation for the work that you're willing to undertake. Past commissions have appointed each of you. They saw something in each of you that made them believe that you have a perspective and the skills to help our community do this important work. And so we want to make sure that you understand our appreciation, and we look forward to getting your guidance on how we can facilitate completing our mission here. That's all I have at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner Katie Barnett. So let's go ahead and receive information from Casey, City Staff, Assistant City Manager, regarding the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, which was referenced in the mayor's comments. I actually also have their website pulled up. If you guys have any questions, I can share my screen. But Casey, will you go ahead and take it away so we understand a little bit more about this organization?
Sorry, it's a lot to coordinate. So I also have I don't have the website pulled up. I have another document pulled up. But starting off, I'm Casey Toomey. I am one of our assistant city managers for the city, and thank you all for having me at your meeting this evening. I did want to just provide an overview of GARE, and as I was putting comments together, I came across a video that I thought I would share with all of you. It can say a lot more eloquently than I what GARE is all about. So I'm going to try to share this, and please let me know if you can't see it or hear it.
A social movement
Volume
that
okay?
only moves people is nearly a revolt. A movement that changes both people and institutions is a revolution.
The Government Alliance on Race and Equity is a national network of local government working to advance racial equity and lift up outcomes for everyone. GARE is helping people to understand that the government had a role in creating racial inequity and creating racial disparities. You have to normalize conversations about race. That means that we have commonly held definitions, that we're working from a shared framework and shared understanding.
My observation and experience was that we had to move beyond the conversations about diversity and inclusion and really talk about racism and structural racism and systemic racism, how that contributed and how it continues to contribute to the disparities that we see in our community.
Looking at redlining, looking at urban renewal, and normalizing that dialogue so that there's a much more broad understanding about the root causes of disparity in communities of color and how we have an opportunity to do something about that.
The city of St. Paul set a goal for all employees to go through our racial equity foundations training by the end of 2017, and we were able to achieve that goal.
We've been working at this for a long time in the city, taking them through a serious Race to Power of an Illusion so people can understand why we were even coming at this work.
We have trained over 5,000 employees. Through that, the conversation around race became normalized.
Operationalizing racial equity means that we're not just talking about theory, that we're actually creating change. We're taking ideas and putting them into practice using a racial equity tool and developing racial equity action plans.
We were able to put in place a racial equity toolkit. And through that, we were able to work with other government agencies in the city of Portland to start talking about the outcomes that we want to see, the services that we provide.
One of the most exciting things that the SFPUC is working on to advance racial equity is really this place-based investment in Bayview Hunters Point, in which we have our Southeast Treatment Plant, where we treat 80% of the city's sewage. It is a huge opportunity to really deeply invest in a historic African-American neighborhood.
Creating a space where if you're working for the city of St. Paul, that means you're looking at everything from an equity lens, and that you're going to put together an action plan, and that supervisor is going to hold you accountable for achieving those goals.
We finally got a workforce equity strategic plan that has been resourced by council and the mayor. One of the things that we did in order to get that plan in place was to go out and have focus groups with our employees. We are creating an entire program of training and workshop type deals so that all 2,500 managers and supervisors in the city will be required to go through this.
Organizing means that within the institution, we're building skills. We're building capacity to actually transform the organization.
What I'm most excited about happening is a true community engagement. I'd like to see a full integration of all of these entities coming together under the infrastructure that GARE provides.
If we are to get to the kind of democratic, just society you want, it's only going to happen locally with local government. And it will be the accumulation of all that work that finally actually shows us as a nation how we live.
So, let's see. Hopefully that gave you all a good introduction and overview to the type of work that GARE is working toward. Can everybody hear me okay? I always need a feedback. Thank you. Since joining GARE, the city has used the peer network to do some of the following items, well, all of the following items. We used it to obtain sample job descriptions that we were able to use to identify the roles and responsibilities and desired qualifications, skills, and abilities for our soon-to-be hired Director of Equity and Inclusion. We've been able to reach out to other communities to see how they're considering equity as part of their prioritization of capital improvement projects. We've attended webinars, one even today, related to sharpening the focus on equity and making strategic budget decisions. And we were able to ask other communities if they've been able to elevate equitable banking practices in their contracts with banks for banking services for their organizations. So that's just a little sample of the work that we've started doing through GARE. The mayor and I attended the annual meeting last April. It was just the 4th annual meeting of GARE, so it's a relatively new organization, but it's growing exponentially. In fact, this year, their annual meeting that was scheduled for April reached maximum capacity, and they had to restrict membership from each region to ensure that people from all over the country were able to attend. So it's very exciting to think about cities, counties, and other government organizations really getting excited about being intentional about this kind of work. Let's see. So at that annual meeting, they offer opportunities to train the trainer in this racial equity toolkit that the mayor has mentioned. Because the annual meeting was canceled because of COVID this year, we weren't able to attend and go to that train the trainer session. But because we are members of GARE, we're able to reach out to their staff, and they'll be able to help us as we go forward. So now a little bit about the racial toolkit, and I should have scrolled up before I started my comments. I'll start here. I'm going to go ahead and walk through it briefly. I'll also add a link in the chat to where on the GARE website you can download the document, and then I'll have Scott follow up with sending out the information. But just kind of briefly, what is it? I've really just started drilling down into it myself, but here's some of the ways that it was described on the GARE's website. That it's designed to integrate explicit consideration of racial equity in decisions, including policies, practices, programs, and budgets. That it is both a product and a process. That the use of a racial equity tool can help to develop strategies and actions that reduce racial inequities and improve success for all groups. And it provides a structure for institutionalizing the consideration of racial equity. So we'll start walking through the toolkit, but put simply, it's really just a set of questions or steps to take when you're considering policies, practices, and programs. And you'll see here the questions on the screen, and I can probably zoom in a little bit to make those easier to read. And just for the benefit of folks that are watching, I thought maybe we could just kind of walk through the questions. So again, haven't spent a lot of time drilling down to what's shown here as kind of the numbers under the steps, but have spent a little time with the steps. So step 1 is where when you're looking at a policy or program, you're talking about what is the proposal? What are the desired results and outcomes? And you can see here kind of some additional sub-questions that talk about how you get through the answering of these questions to be able to have a good feeling about those questions. Step 2, it's about data. What's the data and what is it telling us? I think a lot of times we talk about data, but having, again, this kind of institutionalized structure where we're making sure that we're looking at data and what types of data we're looking at, it helps ensure that you're being consistent as we all do our work. Sorry about the scrolling. Step 3 is how have communities been engaged, and what are their opportunities to expand engagement. Question or step 4 is about strategies. What are the strategies for advancing racial equity? What are the strategies for mitigating unintended consequences? And a question that I think is very important: who benefits from what's being proposed and who isn't benefiting from what's being proposed? Question 5 is, what is your plan for implementation? And then question 6 is, how will you ensure accountability, communicate and evaluate your results? Ooh, I think I scrolled a little too fast. And really that's it. And I realize that seems like an oversimplification, and it probably is, but it is just a set of questions that we all can work through. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a brief overview. Like I said, I'll share out the link in the chat and with Scott for you all. You can, there's a good document there that you can download and or view online, and we can certainly get copies to folks if they need them, that talk a little bit more, provide a little more background information about who should use the toolkit and some good examples of how I think there's a good example from the city of Seattle, how they've used the toolkit. So I'll stop there for questions. I'll stop sharing my screen so I can see some more of you, and be happy to try to answer questions.
This is Commissioner Dan Coviello. Thank you very much for outlining the steps, and I look forward to looking into the document even further. And what I'm curious about is, it sounds as though we have not used this toolkit specifically in the past, but has the city do something like this in the past? And would that past work be useful in informing what we plan to do moving forward?
This is Assistant City Manager Casey Toomey. Your question cut out in the middle, but I think the question was, have we used this toolkit in the past? And if we haven't, have we used other similar tools? And would that be useful to incorporate into our work going forward? Is that kind of it? Okay, no, we have not used this formal set of questions as we have looked at policies, programs, or services that we're providing. I will say that just as recently as Tuesday night, the City Commission did talk about their capital improvement plan, and they had prepared a matrix that staff used to score capital improvement projects, and equity was a piece of that. So it was a piece of a larger rubric, if you want to think about it like that. So kind of similar, that it was a tool to use to be consistent across all of the projects as we considered those, but it was just, equity was just one of many criteria that staff looked at. So this would be kind of I hate to say drilling down again, but this would be a further drilling down of questions that were just related to equity. I think while the city hasn't used maybe other tools, I know there are other tools like this being used in the community. Sat through a really good presentation yesterday on the equity tool that the Community Health Impact Plan used, and very similar kinds of questions. So that one, again, has kind of been in the arena of community health. So, but I think absolutely that work would be useful. I know that they helped the Parks and Rec Advisory Board last summer go through an analysis. So hopefully that answers your question.
Commissioner Dan Coviello, yes, it does. Thank you for that. I've seen the health impact plan, and I agree it digs into some important aspects. I'm interested to see what other work we're doing and what we can expand on. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Jay Pryor, Human Relations Commissioner. So I understand in terms of moving forward, we will use this system tool to evaluate whatever programs we might want to create. Are there programs already in existence that we are going to go backwards into and use this tool to assess whether they meet that criteria? And if not, those will be shifted. Are there already existing programs, things like that, that we could go backwards and use that tool for? And is that being done or planned to be done?
Assistant City Manager Casey Toomey. I would say I think that the mayor's charge was to go back and look at existing ordinances. That's what the commission's going to be talking about next Tuesday. So I think that would be an example of looking backward at what our existing code provisions are. Now, obviously, we have a very large city code, and so the idea of taking each one of those code provisions through this this level of analysis seems a bit daunting to me. I know, Katie, you mentioned, Commissioner Barnett, that 4 hours a year isn't enough, but I'm not sure that we could get through all of the code. It'd take a long time. So I think there will need to be some conversation about how to prioritize that. And that might, again, we'll hear a lot more from the commission Tuesday night and get direction from them. But I think that could be some work that you all could do in conjunction or congruently with the Citizen Police Review Board.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm Commissioner Katie Barnett. So I guess I kind of thought about using this toolkit in the sense that we haven't ever measured our impact as a commission on the community. You know, we have a huge purpose, which is to eliminate prejudice and discrimination for all kinds of groups within our community. And so I really liked this toolkit in that there were some very specific points of measuring success. And so in a broad scope, I guess, I would like to use this toolkit simply for our commission to measure we're having in our community to guide how we move forward with this discussion. I don't really know what else to say about the GARE toolkit other than to wait. I can share the website. I mean, right on the homepage, there's just some very specific questions you should ask in the purpose of what you're doing to achieve racial equity, and I like that in using that to guide what we do as a commission. That's really all I have for that right now, unless there are any other questions or comments from anyone. We can move on to the next agenda item. Does anyone else have anything to say about that?
Commissioner, easy to me, if I may, just thank you all again for listening. And I did want to circle back and make the point that GARE is very intentional about centering race when they talk about equity, and they have discussions about intersectionality and how there are indirect benefits for all groups. But I think that is also something that there may be other toolkits that are more centering other areas of equity conversations. So that's something else that, as you mentioned, the broader scope of the work that you all do, we may also want to continue to explore and think about.
Thank you, Commissioner Katie Barnett. So the next item on our agenda is to discuss possible next steps into calendar future meetings. And, you know, I did mention before that we've been meeting quarterly. I'm wondering if that's something that we should perhaps ramp up. You know, if we think about it in that sense, the next time we would meet is September. And I just don't know what kind of meaningful action we can take between now and September. So I guess right now I'd just like to move for a vote of the commission to perhaps meet once a month. if that would be okay, between maybe now and the end of the year, just to discuss revisiting really what we do as a commission. So that is my motion. Do I have a second?
I second. Commissioner Caleb Stevens. I second.
Okay. Are there any commissioners opposed to meeting once a month through December?
Excuse me, Commissioner Barnett, under our new rules, you do have to call roll, and each commissioner has to vote one at a time.
Okay. Thank you so much. I wrote it down, and that's on my page over here. Okay. So let's do a roll call. Commissioner Taylor?
I'm in favor. Can you hear?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Falls?
Aye.
Commissioner Dahl?
I'm in favor.
Commissioner Stevens?
I'm in favor.
Commissioner Pryor?
I vote yes.
Commissioner Coviello?
I'm in favor.
And Commissioner Bloxham?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. We will convene monthly through December. So with regard to next steps, I have a meeting with Tanya, who is the chair of the Community Police Advisory Board. And that is the board we were charged with working with to kind of address all the issues going on. And so I have a meeting with her on Monday. I'd like to understand what her board does a little bit more in depth before we truly start to figure out how we can help as a commission and just have action items. So I think that meeting is actually a little bit
Excuse me, this is Tony Wheeler, City Attorney. Chairperson Barnett, you've frozen. We can't hear you anymore. We can see you, but we cannot hear you.
Hi, I lost my connection, sorry. I don't know what all you caught, but I just want to give everyone an opportunity to voice their opinion on some ideas. I'm sure everyone's been reading and thinking about how we can help as a commission. And so I just wanted to move forward and let everyone just get some ideas out there for achieving our purpose. I'll let you guys go.
Oh.
Commissioner Falls, were you going to say something?
I was, but my microphone doesn't seem to be working.
It works. I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I was going to suggest that one of the issues we need to focus on and address is policing, as well as how our courts interact how that becomes a situation of everything going on. There's only so much we can do on the economic front as well as other matters, but it seems like policing is the hot button issue right now.
So we are charged with working with the Community Police Advisory Board, and like I said, I'm going to have a meeting with the chair, and then we will get to work on figuring out how we can work with them. I believe they're having their meeting. We're having our meeting, and then they will have their meeting. I believe it's next week, or maybe even the end of. Yeah, I think it's this next week. So I'd kind of like to see where they come out of their meeting, talk to the chair again, and I just don't want to duplicate a lot of work, but we are going to be working with them. So that's a priority, and I think we can kind of take that and set it aside as if we're going to talk about policing, then that would be a topic for discussion for when we meet with the Community Police Advisory Board. Would that be okay? I mean, unless you guys have specific ideas right now with regard to policing, we can get them out and then and get them documented, and then we can bring that to the advisory board. Does anyone have specifics?
Commissioner Stevens, I did have a question as far as evictions and stuff like that goes. I talked to the mayor a little bit, asking them what we could do to stay evictions for the foreseeable future or something like that. And so I was just wondering whether we could work, because I know the sheriff's department, but also the police interact with evictions. And so I don't know whether that makes any sense or not, but I was just wondering how we could possibly get involved with that. Maybe Tony and Scott would know as well, but thank you.
Yes, this is Tony Wheeler, City Attorney, and Commissioner Stevens, that's a very good question. There is a lot of concern in the community and elsewhere with the financial uncertainty about the ability to pay rent. Unfortunately, our research has shown that local governments don't have the authority to prohibit evictions. That would have to be something done at the state level by the state legislature or an act of the governor. There is the Kansas Residential Landlord and Tenant Act and other state laws that allow a property owner who is leasing property to exercise those rights, and the city doesn't have the authority to do that at this time. So unfortunately, I don't have positive news to give you on that topic.
All right, Commissioner Stevens, thank you, Tony.
Tony Wheeler, City Attorney, I could, you could take the position of advocating a legislative change and suggesting to the City Commission that when it develops its legislative priority statement, and that it highlight that and ask for that to be considered. And that is certainly within the governing body's authority to lobby for a change at the state level.
Commissioner Barnett, so that would be just a legislative policy request that we would have for the city for the next legislative session starting in 2021. Is that correct?
Tony Wheeler, City Attorney, yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Marissa Taylor, I would like to suggest that, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to suggest before we do anything in the area of evictions that we should hear from landlords. I personally am a landlord, and I have people that started not paying in February, and now they're going to be forced to pay, but I've lost a lot of money. I'm worried about losing the house, and I try to keep my rents affordable. I'm sure that other landlords would have other things to say about this. It's not just a one-sided thing. I think that rather than staying all evictions, maybe we ought to help people budget and do that kind of thing so they can remain and pay rent. Thank you.
Commissioner Katie Barnett, so it sounds like evictions might be an agenda item for our next monthly meeting. Does anyone else have ideas for the overall refocus and re-energizing of our purpose here on the Human Relations Commission? I just have a few things, but I want to wait until you guys are done. I'm sure you guys have been thinking about it. Commissioner Pryor, do you have something?
Yeah, Jay Pryor, Human Relations Commissioner. The focus area for me that I would love to see us have some impact around in terms of policing would be around domestic violence cases and the disproportionate amount of dual arrest that Douglas County has, and in particular around Black women who either don't call the police because they don't want to lose their kids or they don't want to end up in jail themselves. And like really looking at what kind of system do we need in place where people can get the help they need, feel safe without getting thrown in jail and then end up in some kind of debtor's cycle because they can't afford to pay their way out of it. So that particular system of just all of that, but particularly when it comes to domestic violence. And I know that we have experts in our own town at the Willow Domestic Violence Center that have ideas and know how to do some of those things that are also underutilized and or we aren't tapping into that talent. So that's where I'd just like to see a way for us to figure that out.
Okay. Martha Taylor, I think the basis of a lot of problems, and a lot of people agree about this, is that we're not listening. And I think that we could maybe put that on the agenda, how we could have programs where where people would listen to each other, particularly listen to the minority community, which is very marginalized. I also have seen community policing where actually the police ride bicycles because it puts them closer to the people that they're working with or that they're dealing with. If you know someone, it makes it easier to see their side. That's all.
So this is Commissioner Coviello, Dan Coviello. The one comment that I have with respect to next steps is that, simply put, it's been said before, this is a large task. The city code is large. It's a big and pervasive problem. And whenever faced with a large task, I like to approach it, and I think it might be useful for us as a commission to look at it as potentially many small projects that interrelate to each other to reach the big end goal. One possible way to break it down is based on the GARE resource toolkit, granted it's still quite large, is in step one where it says, what does this proposal have an ability to impact? One section is housing, one section is health, one section is transportation. I know that some of the commissioners have some subject matter expertise in some of these areas, and it may also be useful to align these potential areas of focus with community organizations that have more knowledge in those realms that could inform us to make better actions. So in summary, I'd love for us to maybe find ways to make this big project seem small so we can make quick and meaningful actions on what we're trying to do here.
This is Commissioner Barnett. Thank you so much for that. I think that actually leads into a little bit of what I've been thinking about. And I do appreciate this very open and honest discussion that we're all having because I feel we all have different perspectives, and I just respect what everyone has to say. And so there's no right answer here. Though the things that I've been thinking about really are similar to that, Commissioner Coviello, in that, you know, I think that there's a way to connect with public institutions like hospitals and schools and our Community Police Advisory Board, our state, county, and using that toolkit to connect with all these social service agencies. Commissioner Pryor, you mentioned Willow. I think that might also be an agenda item for next month, is laying out what social service agencies are out there that we should connect with to figure out, again, how to move forward. I kind of see our job as commissioners, I kind of looked at it as a flow chart. You know, of course, we are to receive complaints of discrimination, and we're to do training and outreach. But there's also this sector that I feel like we've been missing out on, in that really finding the systemic racism and discrimination within the confines of life generally. And so I would, you know, compartmentalizing or making that, making our purpose into smaller projects, I can certainly relate and get behind. I also, so I guess that would be an agenda item for next time. I don't know if you guys have looked at the, other than Mayor Ananda's direction that she gave us, I don't know if you all have looked at Chapter 10 of the city code, but there's also two other things that I recognize that we have kind of the authority, or something that maybe we have not been utilizing. One is to issue publications, you know, results of investigations that we do on discrimination complaints is one, something that's not confidential in nature. But we have an ability to issue publications that could better educate or spotlight social service agencies, and that's in section 104.5 of Chapter 10 of the City Code. And the second thing is to cooperate with the Kansas Human Rights Commission, or other organizations or agencies whose purposes are consistent with what we do. So we have an opportunity to participate in other meetings as well. So again, and I can send this out a little bit later to the commission, but looking at it from, visually looking at it from receiving complaints, outreach and training, and connecting with social service agencies who may be better equipped to handle a lot of these questions that we have, or issues that we have, as well as dealing with the policing problem generally with the Community Policing Advisory Board. So those are my ideas, and maybe, again, we can refocus and revisit those at our next meeting. Does anyone else have anything to add?
Commissioner Stevens, I had a question. As far as publication goes then, what kind of permission do we need to publish things? Is it through the website? Can we be posting like different educators' information, whether it's their Instagram feeds or things like that, like quick, accessible information, or do we have to have a meeting each time to get it approved? That's my question. Thank you.
Tony Wheeler, City Attorney. The communications would most likely be directed through our communications office, and we can do everything from printing brochures that might be helpful, or identifying links that we can share on our website or on through our social media networks, but it would be funneled through the city communications office rather than each commissioner accessing it independently. So that's how it would operate. But you could have a discussion about the resources or the links that you think are educational and informative, and I think that might be a very good service to the community of developing a resource list about educating our public about some of these issues, educating people on how to have these tough discussions with their neighbors, their friends, their coworkers. So if there are resources out there that you have confidence in or you want to recommend, I think we could schedule maybe a special work session on that where we go through them, and then you all decide on which ones you wish to recommend at a certain point, and then we can develop that into a publication, if that sounds acceptable.
Commissioner Barnett, I really like that idea, and if you think about this special work session and what would go into it, and what would go into publication, I think that even if we had a monthly book club or monthly reading list or something like that, we'd only need to have within our special work session 12 line items, 12 books that we recommend to the general public and to our community that could make an impact. So I don't think that the task would need to be that daunting. It's not like we need to release 52 books and resources that we would all need to approve at this special work session. So I think this is really doable, and perhaps even that's what we could get started on at our next meeting, is we could all maybe come to the meeting with our own recommendations of books, blogs, resources that we could recommend, and kind of filter through that as a commission. Thoughts?
This Commissioner Pryor, I think it's a great idea, and until then, for example, like if there's any commissioners or people involved, even the people that are watching, if there's any white people that haven't seen the documentary 13th yet, like that's a great place to start, especially if you want to understand policing and some of the history that is behind that. I feel like, just to let's not wait till next week. If anybody has other things that people can start to do and educate themselves on, I think it's important that we just dive right in there.
Hi, this is Commissioner Bloxham. I want to just add to that some of my general concerns just about our community as far as information getting out to the public. We don't have very active journalism center in this town, and while I think it's very important that we have recommendations for the community, I think we have got to have a platform for this community to communicate with us. And so another way that we can reach out, that we can hear the reports from the people that we are actually affecting I think is very important. So as we think through this, I don't know what that looks like. I'm not saying I have all the rules for this, but I know it's extremely frustrating for me not being able to hear and see community reactions on a very, very minimal level. So while we come up with these recommendations, let's also start thinking about how we can engage the community and how they can reach out to us as well as to each other to share what's actually happening. And once a month is great that we're meeting, but things are happening on a daily level now. And I heard Commissioner Stevens when he said, do we have to get together every time we make a statement? I mean, I think it's really important that maybe we have a subcommittee that can meet on the fly if things are really happening, because things are happening now, which is, it's exciting and frustrating all at the same time. And I want to hear voices. I don't want to just hear from this commission. So I just want to make sure that that's said and that we think about what kind of platform we're serving our community on.
Commissioner Barnett, Commissioner Bluxham, thank you so much for that. So I actually had a discussion with city staff about this. I was a little bit disappointed to see that our commission meeting wasn't listed on the city's website on the calendar for today. And, you know, I was trying to find a way for the public to contribute to the conversation. And of course, the way the city's technology is set up, that's just not able to happen right now since we're meeting via teleconferencing. But I was a little bit disappointed that this is such a pertinent discussion, as evidenced by the mayor making a public statement about it and directing our commission to take action. So what I'd really like to see, and again, Scott, when I talked to him earlier today, there are ways to get the word out to get more public participation and for the public to know what we're doing so that we can hear from them, because I really wanted to listen today. And this was not a chance for us to talk and to opine on what we think should be going on in our community, because look at us. I mean, it's a chance for us to hear from our community and to hear from our commission does not necessarily reflect the community we serve, in my opinion. And so I really, really want to listen, but that can't happen with the confines of this technology, and also if nobody knows that this meeting is happening. So, Scott did explain that there are ways to ramp up the public information, and there are ways to get the word out a little more aggressively, and that the city is more than happy to do that. And so I think that we're all nodding our heads here, and I don't know that there needs to be a motion. Next time we have our meeting, let's just try and have a little more robust response to the meeting date on behalf of the city. And then I certainly am sharing on social media, as I'm sure you guys are. So that's our way to listen. And also, I believe that perhaps the next time we meet, the direction from the government on how we can meet in person is relaxing a little bit. And I believe the next time we meet in July, we will be able to meet in person, and thus we can have a little more open public comment, and we will be able to listen. This is a good jumping off point. But let's try and build a little momentum to hear from the community we serve.
Tony Wheeler, City Attorney. Commissioner Barnett, I appreciate your comments very much, and we will make an effort to broadcast our meetings more robustly next time. We did put something out on Twitter, and a couple of years ago, we had our communications director come in and talk to the Human Relations Commission and talk about all of the ways that the city communicates with the community, and maybe that's something that we can have a refresher on that so that you know what all of the options are. And I'd be happy to make that happen. Another thing I wanted to add is the city does have a tool that's called Lawrence Listens, where we do solicit feedback on specific topics. And the City Commission often uses that tool when it is interested in hearing about a certain topic. So I'll ask our communications director to also give us some information on how we might access that tool. Finally, I want to just confirm, we do have, I believe, each commissioner's contact information on the city's website, and we could issue a press release or push something out that says that you are open to receiving communications by email communications, if that is your desire, from the community. You know, we could develop a press release that says that you want to hear from the community on these topics, and we would direct them to your email address, if that's appropriate, or your address, whatever contact information you've given us to share with the public. Of course, that's certainly up to all of you to decide if you want to do that, but that would be another tool available to you.
I have a question, Commissioner Dahl with the Human Relations Commission, but how does the Lawrence Listens work? What exactly is involved?
Tony Wheeler, City Attorney. I might ask Casey Toomey if she can give a little information on that. I know the City Manager's Office uses it more consistently than our office does. Casey, would you be willing to weigh in, please?
Sure. This is Assistant City Manager Casey Toomey. And if I could do two things at one time, I could try to pull it up on and share my screen, but it's sort of a platform for survey questions. So we ask survey questions, and there's usually multiple topics at any given time that can range from multiple choice questions, open-ended questions. You can write your own question, or the commission could post the question. Folks can, it's a self-selected survey, so people can go on and take the survey. And there's options for folks who you can do it anonymously. If you want to register and provide your name, you can do that. That gives us a little bit of ability to do some analysis of the responses that come in to the different surveys. So there is, that's kind of a broad overview. Is that getting at what you're after? Great.
Yes, thank you very much.
This is Commissioner Bloxham. I guess I need some more clarification on, or maybe I need to clarify my feelings about how we are listening and how formal we make things for very disenfranchised people. And so while I think that we have great tools, I think we need to look as a commission on how we are listening to everyday disenfranchised people that are fearful when they're making any kind of comments, and whatever that is. But it's not, whatever we've been using, it's not getting to me as a commissioner. So let's maybe figure out a more simpler way that people are going to feel as if we are listening to them. And that's outside of holding big sessions or going to the library. Let's think about really simple ways that we can meet the people that we're really serving. Because I would find it difficult to file a complaint with this board, me, and I sit on it. So I think it's very important that we rethink how we are reaching out to the public. That's all I got. Commissioner Barnett, thank you, Commissioner Bloxham. Yes, I agree. And, you know, this commission hasn't always been in the forefront. There are a lot of things going on within the city, but I think that this is unfortunately or fortunately a hot topic right now. And so what we are, our voice or connection to us as commissioners for the community is really important. I wouldn't necessarily say our voice is important. Being able to connect with us is the most important thing for the community. And so really publishing that information on the website. And, you know, the mayor did say in her comments when she was talking at the city commission meeting, Black Lives Matter. And I'm just wondering if even just the most simple step of putting the Black Lives Matter national website on the city's page and then linking to the City Human Relations Commission is just a very simple first step for the city to do. It seems pretty obvious to me, and I don't necessarily know that we can take a vote to direct the city of Lawrence to do anything, but I would recommend on our Human Relations Commission page, at the very least, that we publish the link to the Black Lives Matter page. I don't know if I need a motion for that. I guess I'll motion. Is that a possibility, staff, for us to manipulate the Human Relations Commission webpage?
Tony Wheeler, City Attorney. We do have a communications plan and a communications director that there are certain rules about what can be posted on the city's website and what can be linked to. And I don't have those rules in front of me. I'm certainly willing to look into that and see what might be possible, but I can't say for certain at this point.
Commissioner Stevens, I was just wondering, you said the mayor was available for that. Would the mayor know whether we could do that, or could the mayor move on that? Thank you.
I think she also would need to consult with the communications department here in the city to answer that question.
This is Commissioner Bloxham. As we building upon that, if those are questions that we are asking the mayor, I'd also like to ask her specifically how the comments are being reviewed regarding this board and this body, and people that are wanting their voice heard. Who is reviewing those comments and how are they getting to us? And if we can open that up, is so it can be more available just for us to hear people without it being so formal. I mean, as simple as we learn things through communication, and I feel like sometimes it gets so, because we are not a body that can make those decisions readily without some, some forethought and lots of people getting involved. I just want to make sure that we maintain some kind of way that we're able to view what people are saying about our work, and it not coming from multiple sources. So again, going on the availability, I want to know what people are saying, and sometimes I feel like I don't get that until it's too late. So again, that's all I got.
Commissioner Barnett. So I guess I would like to, I don't necessarily think we need a motion for this, but I would like to find out if staff could find out about how we can manipulate our webpage, the Human Relations Commission webpage, to perhaps have that publication list and a publication list for the city, for the blogs and books and recommendations that we're thinking of making. Knowing those rules and the parameters behind making those, putting that stuff out there on the web would be great. So we can go ahead and move forward. So could the city bring that information back to the commission relatively quickly on the rules?
City Attorney Tony Wheeler, yes, we can do that. We can have that ready for your next meeting.
Commissioner Barnett, thank you so much. So does anyone else have anything to say? I think that I've taken good notes, and I know that Scott has taken great notes. He's keeping the minutes for this commission meeting. This, I believe, is a good jumping off point. I am so grateful to the commission for agreeing to meet monthly. I know that we are all very, very busy. The evenings are tough for all of us after a hard day's work. Many of us have family we need to feed and get to bed. So I am very grateful for everyone to agreeing to prioritize this issue once a month instead of 4 times a year. So thank you. And again, we have a good list to get started on topics for discussion for our agenda in July. And I presume that, Scott, you will send an email to commissioners finding out the best date. And I assume it'll be 5:30 in the evening, the best date in July for the city commission, or the Human Relations Commission to meet again. Does anyone else have any other comments whatsoever on how we move forward?
Yeah, Commissioner Dahl here with the Human Relations Commission. I just have another question since I'm fairly new to Lawrence, but do the residents know about the Human Relations Commission?
Commissioner Barnett, I think, again, that's a great question. And what I was getting at with my conversation earlier today with city staff, in that there is, virtually no social media presence. There's no, if you log on to the city's website and look at their calendar for today, the Human Relations Commission special meeting, although it's a special meeting, it's not planned, was not listed on the city's homepage or the city's calendar. So like we've been talking about for the last few minutes, I think there's a lot of work to do there. No, the community doesn't know a lot about the Human Relations. A few days ago that one of my friends experienced some discrimination in housing, and it took them, this was 10 years ago, but it took them asking around and really, engaging several different attorneys to understand that the city handles those claims. The Human Relations Commission investigates and handles those claims. And so there's certainly public education to be done with what we do with regard to complaints and what we are to achieve generally for the city of Lawrence. So I don't think there's a very comprehensive social media presence, and it's something that we can work with city staff to certainly improve on. Okay, Commissioner Barnett here. Does anyone else have any other questions before we adjourn? Or any other topics you want to cover, anything you want to say? I know, Commissioner Stevens, you mentioned that it's Pride Month, and I do want to acknowledge this is Pride Month, and we are not going to meet again until July. So are there any Pride events going on or anything that anyone wants to say about Pride Month? Okay, with that, Oh,
Is it
sorry.
okay for me to say something, Assistant City Manager Casey Toomey? In case you all aren't aware, the City Commission did have a proclamation at a meeting where they did declare the month of June LGBTQIA Pride Month in the City of Lawrence. So in case you didn't see that on our social media presence, we were able to get that accomplished. So encourage you all to go out and read that proclamation.
City Commissioner Caleb Stevens. I also would like I'd like to ask the City Commission to recognize Juneteenth coming up. It's incredibly important. The only holiday really for the Black community. So I think that that's super important as we are moving forward with working towards liberation of all Black people. I think that that would be something that we need to highlight, as well as finding out how we can start pushing out like real-time information because the city is consistently behind. We can't wait for meetings because people are not living well. Like, we just don't have time to be waiting. So if this commission is going to be active and we're going to be actually helpful instead of reactionary, we have to streamline the communication and streamline ways to get information out and streamline ways to help our community. Otherwise, I really think that the reason why people don't reach out to us is because we don't have any power and we don't do anything to help them actually. And so it just turns out to be a waste of time and a way for us to just get pigeonholed into saying that we're whining or complaining about things. So if we really think that Black Lives Matter, if we really think that Pride Month matters, if we really think that Juneteenth is an issue, if we really think that citizenship is an issue, if we really think that these things are real things, then we have to actually be willing to do the work to get the communication fixed and streamlined, or otherwise we're just kind of patronizing people. And I would never recommend people waste their emotional energy that they already don't have right now in the midst of a pandemic to show up and be turned away. Thank you.
Commissioner Pryor, do we need to have a motion to be able to make a request of the City Commission to designate Juneteenth?
City Attorney Tony Wheeler, staff can forward that request on to the commission. We do have a meeting on next Tuesday. That would be the last meeting that we're having in the month of June. We posted the agenda today, but we could do an update and issue a proclamation, I believe. Casey, do you have anything to add?
Assistant City Manager Casey Toomey, I'm happy to do that. I just am in front of a computer and am embarrassed to say I just Googled City of and proclamation for Juneteenth and found lots of examples. So I'd be happy to put together a draft and get it on the agenda for next Tuesday. Commissioner Stevens, would it be all right if I reached out to you to show you what I put together?
Yes, certainly. Commissioner Stevens, yes.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Bloxham. Just to piggyback on that, thank you, Caleb, for those words. I really appreciate that. And secondly, Juneteenth, unfortunately, the last I knew from other board members that sit on that celebration committee, they aren't going to be hosting anything, but I think there's other things that we can do, even virtually, to acknowledge that and to push forward that movement and that agenda and just what it is. I feel like I have the same conversation with this 51st dates with my kids every year about this time, but it's something important to speak about, especially for our community, because there was radical, amazing things happening around here in regards to slavery and abolition. And so while we aren't having a celebration, I think there's many more ways that we can promote and use a platform for that. And again, improving that real-time communication is going to be what is going to be most effective for us moving forward, in my opinion. Commissioner Barnett, thank you. each commissioner for your contribution today. And this is a good jumping off point. I'm so glad that we've had this meeting today. And if no one else has any other questions or comments, I would move to adjourn this meeting and schedule our next meeting for July from city staff.
Commissioner Stevens, I second.
I suppose I need to take a roll call for that, staff. Is that correct?
Yes, go ahead. Tony Wheeler.
Okay.
Attorney.
Commissioner Taylor,
Aye. Yes.
Commissioner Falls,
Yes.
Commissioner Dahl,
Yes.
Commissioner Coviello,
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Bluxham,
Yes.
Commissioner Pryor.
Yes.
With that, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all so much for your time this evening and for your committed time every month through the end of the year. Thank you.